Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Green Room, the webinar series from the Music Sustainability Alliance. I'm Joel McCower, Strategy Director at MSA, and our topic today is the power of renewables, how tours, festivals, and producers are integrating clean energy into live events. MSA, of course, is, as I said, the Music Sustainability Alliance. We're an industry consortium where industry stakeholders learn, innovate, and collaborate to accelerate a sustainable future. We provide communities science-based solutions, resources, best practices, and tools to create a culture where sustainability is the norm, not the exception. Before we begin, a couple housekeeping details. First, this is being recorded and the recording will be made available to review or share. A link will be sent to all registered participants a little later on. Second, you'll find the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Clicking on that opens up the chat box. Feel free to introduce yourself and say where you're dialing in from. The chat function is also how we'll be fielding your questions, which you will get to later on, but which you can feel free to ask at any time. All right, let's get going. Live events are, by design, temporary little cities. They need power for stages, sound, lighting, screens, food vendors, and everything in between. Historically, that's meant diesel generators with all their noise, fumes, and carbon footprint. But today we have a rapidly growing toolbox: temporary solar and battery systems, grid-connected renewables, smarter power management, and new models for working with venues, utilities, and technology providers. What does it take to implement renewables at a festival, arena, or stadium? Over the next hour, we'll explore how early leaders are making it work at scale, not just for one green show, but across tours and festival seasons. Joining me today are Dre Hanna, Vice President of Festival Production at Goldenvoice, calling in today from Nashville. Charlie Hatcher from Healing Appalachia, from Lewisburg, West Virginia. And Paul Trainer, Stage Manager and Head Electrician for Coldplay, calling in from Piddington, about an hour and a half northwest of London. Welcome, all of you. I want to start with sort of going around. I'm going to start with you, Charlie. Just in a minute or two, describe the moment at your event or show or in your operations when you first realized renewable power wasn't just possible, but was actually better. Charlie, start with you.
Well, the first time I recognized it was when it would have been year before last. I walked up to these gigantic batteries, not knowing what we had or how this was going to work. And fortunately, we had great partners involved with the Overdrive, who I was very skeptical, and the battery power that they were providing for us, it was better than the shore power. It was better than any generator. It was just good, clean power. At that point, then it was just a matter of working on convincing everyone else that this is real.
And Overdrive Energy is a company that makes battery systems that integrate largely specifically for events,
Mhm.
for those who don't know. So when you say it's better power, what does that mean?
It doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't move. It's consistent the whole time. As we all know, when it hits, when like the base hits or the lights and base all hit at the same time, it doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't move. A lot of the engineers we've had over the years since then have said that it's some of the best power and cleanest and quietest that they've used. And they themselves were very skeptical coming into it.
So Dre, what was your aha moment on renewables?
For me, I started to do research on renewable diesel, R99, in 2020 during COVID, just starting to think about what was possible. We did some trials with our generator company that we used on most of our events, and got them to sign off on using it. And from that point forward, like that was just the stepping off point for me. And then seeing other folks that I work with on the festivals dabble a little bit, right, in some smaller battery or solar, that inspired me to start digging deeper, knowing it was possible. And I just became enamored with the idea of clean energy. And every time we produce an event now and we try something new or we engage with a new department or new vendor who said, is the power on? Like, I can't hear anything, you know? Um, what a wonderful question, you know, to hear. It's nice to know, and people don't realize until they experience, right, this battery power solar hybrid, how much better it can be. So
Yeah.
that's where it started for me.
And for those who don't know Goldenvoice, you produce some of the biggest festivals around. So can you name a few of them?
Yeah, our biggest are Coachella and Stagecoach that take place out in Indio each April. And then we just produced Camp Flog Gnaw Carnival at Dodger Stadium, Portola up in the Bay, a number of festivals at Brookside and Pasadena, and
Yeah.
others. Yep.
Great. And Paul, working with Coldplay, what was your aha moment for renewables?
My moment was I was sat at home during lockdown, and the phone went and was asked, "Do you think it'd be possible for us to run the tour on battery systems?" And at the time, I was like, "Okay, let's have we looked into it." There was none really available as a rental, so we then went forward and built and designed a system that was a tourable system and put it out there. We literally, we've been tweaking it from day one, but we've got to the point, we kept going and kept going, and we again, people were like, the generators are off, running around panicking. We were used because we were using, we were worldwide. We weren't just, we're trying to cover as much as everything. So wherever we could find batteries out of territories, we would try and incorporate them into our system. So it was a big learning curve because obviously, as a tour, it had never been done before. So it was something we all enjoyed the excitement of trying to make this happen, and we're finding the technology and the people that we could talk to make this happen. And then having the full backing of everybody to just keep pushing forward, and that's what we did. We just kept going.
And when you
And,
say when you say you went out to basically create this, you actually started a company called Show Power, or I'm not sure exactly the relationship between Show Power and Coldplay. Maybe you can explain that, but basically a company that now basically creates these kinds of batteries for others, I presume, not just Coldplay.
Well, I don't know. I don't work with Coldplay. They worked with us as a helped us out sort of thing, because my knowledge was like how to get the energy together and what information we needed and what I needed as in batteries and what I needed in inverters. And then Show Power came in, and we went through the system of how we can integrate and how it worked and how we can use the grid where we can, and if we have to use generators, etc., just to charge the system.
Yeah.
So that's where we work with them.
Okay. So, Charlie, you produce a renewably powered festival on top of an abandoned coal mine.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty amazing right then and there. But how did you win over local stakeholders and production teams in coal country who I'm guessing were skeptical that renewables could power a major event?
Oh, everyone was completely skeptical of it. Completely until you put it together and you show them that this actually works. We even scaled up this year, and I believe we're going to scale up again next year in providing renewable energy for all of our RVs as well, and expanding on our vending. It coming from, like you said, I'm in the heart of coal country, which is it's an area that or an industry that's been in decline now for quite some time. And getting folks that are born into it, that's all. I mean, that's all that they knew, to understand that this is possible. It was kind of an uphill battle, but like I said, until you show them that it does actually work and it works flawlessly, I think for me, I go back to it came from finding the right partners to help educate myself as well as those around me and our staff, to show them that this is totally possible. This year, the Overdrive team pulled out more things than what I thought we could do. I learned a lot more this year, and I'm excited to push it into next year and show even more. You'll possibly build a bigger solar field or and expand more into the RV side of stuff. which that's a revenue stream that can help offset the cost of the expansion. So it's a balancing act, but I think it's one that is worthy and just, especially with the concept of our event, which is based upon recovery and folks getting better and healthy and finding a healthy way to live. But you got to have a healthy place to come back to.
So
that solidifies it.
The breakthrough for stakeholders in Gold Country was simply showing them that it could be done, or
Yes.
and them just putting aside their skepticism.
Yes. Well, you got to understand, it's something that you're born into around here. I mean, coal is everywhere around you. You can't drive down the road without seeing a coal truck. I mean, it's everywhere. So to think that there's another way, because that's what you've grown up knowing. It's not just you; it's generational. So it's winning over the older generation and introducing the newer generation into a new way of doing things.
Yeah. Paul, I'm guessing you had a different stakeholder issue because Coldplay system had to pass safety requirements in multiple countries. What did you learn about navigating those regulatory hurdles, and what would you tell someone who's trying this for the first time?
Be advance as much as possible. Speak to the authorities, the venues, the promoters before, and explain what you're looking to do, what you're looking to bring. Speak to your transport people. There was areas in Europe that we didn't even think about at certain points, and obviously we can't go through certain tunnels because of the batteries. And there's certain options. It can be a bit of a minefield, but as long as everyone's got the information, you can get all the details of your system and pass it on to the authorities. I think we advanced as much as possible. We were like 6 months in front all the time, trying to keep because we knew there'd be certain areas and certain venues where we may have issues because of tight fire regulations and things like that. So we developed a partnership and a rapport with all the fire departments and all the local health and safety department and everybody else to ensure that everybody knew how the batteries were deployed, how they worked, how safe they were, everything else. And and pushed, like I say, we had some funny moments where we had a giant 40-foot container full of water that they were going to, if it caught fire, we're going to drop it into it. I was like, well, how are you going to do that? You'll need a crane and you'll need it. And the fire guy just looked at it and went, oh, yeah. That's because if you pick up on a forklift, he's going to drive the forklift. But we were always covered. We knew we had all the fire suppression stuff. We knew how to use it. We had computer systems looking after that to tell us if we had any units that were any faults, any heat, anything like that. So it was just like I say, it's authorities making sure everybody at the venue, all the authorities surrounding the venue, everybody involved knows what we're bringing and how we're going to deploy it and how safe we do it. And, we sign it off every day as electrically safe. So, that was, it became challenging in places, but.
Well, I was going to say, you almost make it sound too easy. Like you do these things and everyone says, okay, we're in, let's go ahead. Tell us a little story about where it was tougher and how you overcame that challenge.
Toughest place, one of the toughest places. A lot of the venues are ex-Olympics, or there's a historical input to certain things. So when we were playing like Rome's Olympic Stadium, it's an amazing old stadium. It's a fantastic building. And because we were using batteries, even though I've been there with several other tours with generators, and we park them in exactly the same place, we were pushed further away. And it wasn't until we actually got there, even though we passed on the information, that they wanted to move. But we travel with a certain amount. There's a finite amount of cable and stuff you can take with you. So all of a sudden we were like a lot of cables short, and it was right. And we all jumped on board and dealt with it. But there was just occasions like that where it was a local law that because of the batteries and, everyone slightly panics because it's batteries, they think they're going to catch fire. It's a very rare occurrence. And there's primary factors involved. It's got as much chance as a generator as much as a battery has. It's a similar thing. So they wanted just to move out of the canopy of the building, and that was just a local law that we hadn't seen. So we hadn't gone through with the promote and everything. So that was one of the issues.
Yeah.
So
Dre, I think one of the challenges that you may have had is this the legacy of renewables as being inefficient or unreliable, or maybe not providing, as Charlie described, the power, consistent power that's needed, the intermittency. Coachella and the recent event you did in Dodger Stadium recently were stages that had both hybrid and fully renewable systems. What made these deployments viable now compared to just a few years ago?
That's a great question. I mean, one, my own knowledge and now connection with companies like Overdrive, who we work with as well, to understand what's possible. And I heard about Coldplay, right, and their battery tour, and being more sustainable, and that certainly piqued my interest. So one, understanding that it was possible is helps me realize, and then starting to reach out and discuss with companies what we could bring in, right? What's the footprint that we need to consider? What are the safety, regulations? And like Paul's experienced, we too, even in different cities in California, have, fire departments are just starting to get hip, right, to batteries, or maybe don't even have conditions of approval or regulations in place yet. So I found, we're actually working with our power partners to provide that safety and regulatory information, and working with the cities to develop, a plan that everybody's comfortable with. So I think one, just seeing it happen in other places, and then for ourselves, trying it out, right? And we started small and incrementally, right? We've started to get bigger and bigger. We did our first stage deployment, a hybrid power solution for a stage last year at Portola. So that was our first foray into staging. Prior to that, we're looking at all of those long running operations like boneyards, site operations, truck stops. So we started small. We're fine tuning those, and now trying to get bigger and bigger. Also based on what companies have available. A lot of companies haven't invested in batteries yet, so they may be sub-renting. So there's some of that too, and it's constantly evolving and changing, right? The tech is changing. So we're along for the ride, and it's a bit trial and error on every show.
Was conventional power trial and error too, or was that just an easy, we know what to do, let's do it?
I mean, conventional power, diesel generators have been around a lot longer than I have. And so when I started in this industry over 13 years ago, that was just the standard, and everybody knew it, and everybody's comfortable with it. So I don't think that there's been much trial and error there, with the exception of like the tier 4 final generators that we're seeing in California now. There was a little bit of trial and error with those and the load that they needed to stay active, because sometimes they would trigger and shut off if there wasn't enough load on the system. And that certainly, especially on stages, right, that freaked us out. And this was prior to battery use. Now we know how to use them. Now the teams know, how to operate. So we're more comfortable using those.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the power of data. Production teams notoriously over request power. They may request 800 amps, but only use 200 or even less. How are you using data? I'll start with you, Dre, sticking with you. How do you use data to sort of right size these systems and in the process reduce costs and shift mindsets towards this kind of trust that's needed for renewables?
Yeah, I love that question, because we're just really starting to get into the data ourselves. So I will say, and I've seen it happen, and it is possible. So for all those people on the call thinking about trying renewables or hybrid power solutions, there is the ability to get the data and then right size and reduce your costs. And I've seen that happen. Overdrive, again, somebody we've worked with, we've started with sort of what did we do last year? And we provided that exact same power spec. Then we monitored all that information, all that data. The next year we right sized and we reduced our costs, which is a dream for any promoter or producer.
I'll bet.
On the staging side, it's, I think, the bane of everybody's existence in the production world. You know, they're going to advance a total, everybody needs, you know, their own separate, you know, service, right? I got to keep audio separate from lighting and video. And all of a sudden we've got 1,800 amps of power needed on a stage, and we never peak over 200 amps. And that's quite common. And so what I've been working on doing is monitoring that system, whether it's just a standard generator system or a hybrid system, or even fully grid power. We're monitoring that data. I'm collecting all of that information so that I can bring our production managers and our production vendors together to say consistently, you are requesting this amount of power, and consistently we are at this level, so that we can use that data to show them how we are going to right size the system, and they need to play ball. The fact that they could go to 100%, right, full white on video, sure they could, but they never need to. We don't ever need to do that. So if we can communicate what our expectations are, set limits, and know that we're going to be fine, we can right size the system and reduce our costs, trucking, et cetera. So that's the goal, and it's an ever evolving process, but that's how we are utilizing the data.
Charlie, how about you? How are you using data around renewables at Healing Appalachia?
You know, this is our second time doing it, and of course, we've got more data coming in this year than what we'd ever have. And I think it's on the side of the advanced work to getting these folks to understand. Yeah, you're asking for this, and the reason you're asking for that, I get it, but it's because you want to have that threshold, that top end, that headroom. But what are the likely chances of them hitting that? It's slim to none, absolutely. And the thing about it is if we're collecting this data and we're able to share it a lot with the production managers, with these other outfits and other bands that are coming in, and getting them to understand what we've got. And yes, we can accommodate this, but here's what we've done over the years, and this is who we did it with. And if you're similar to them, there's no way you're going to be hitting these peak levels that you're talking about. Therefore, like you said, scaling the thing down, or being able to, it'd be for us to expand into other areas to offset other usage. That the data is invaluable on that side.
Yeah. Paul, how about you? Using data, and how?
Well, we were constantly collecting the data, so we just to advance the system. As you all know, the battery technology, everything's moving forward. So we tried to move forward with it. So we were monitoring our system, and if we were adding things to the show, we already knew what that was. We knew that percentage because we'd already monitored that section. We could literally go down to one set of cables going in. So right, just for lighting stage, right, this is what their load is, and then we could work it out when we're adding fixtures. And we again with our friends at Jopo, we used what they use as a smart system. They have a database that you could put a fixture into, and it'd tell you what the actual running power is, and not actually what it states in the book. It's and I think that's a historical thing. It went from on a touring side. I think it was like whatever connection was going into that box is what they needed. So I need a 400 amp connection, right? So I need 400 amps, but and I've done it on several tours over the years before batteries involved, where we used to use the clamp meters. We used to put clamp meters on everything and turn around and go, you're pulling 60 amps, my friend. You're not pulling 260 amps.
Right.
And there's your peak. You might hit a 200 amp peak for 2.3 milliseconds, but there you go, mate. Well done. It was. But I think everybody else is learning. With the vendors we were involved with on on Coldplay, all the vendors got so, they were trying to help out and reduce the loads, and the suppliers of the fixtures were coming in with the vendors and saying, right, can we check this one and see what the load really is? And we've got especially with the audio teams and the video teams, video is always, video is the big, a big part of the show as much as everything else, but to get everybody together and then know that the guys, like as you stated, Hannah, they're not going to go full intensity. One, if they leave it on for too long, the screen will actually catch fire. Two, it's never going to, you might get an impact flash, like a strobe flash that comes across. But other than that, it's the standard. So your levels, you just got to explain to the vendors, these are the levels we're expecting you go to. So, and work with them. With a good electrical team, you can work with them and get them to work with the vendors, and then they can balance the loads. It also helps out with your usage. So it's about knowledge. It's passing on technical information and using the people around you to bring it all together. So you've got everybody's thoughts and aspects on how this is going to come together and work. And we keep the data. We're moving forward with data for with other, we're talking to other, I'm working for other bands. I work forward, so I always suggest the ways of doing it for other things. The data will help the whole industry to move forward. We'll move it forward and make it happen.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that makes it happen are the costs. And you've talked about the costs coming down, but I still think that the costs are kind of still the elephant in the room, or maybe the elephant on stage. I think the upfront investment still scares a lot of promoters. What are some of the finance? And Paul, start with you. What are any financing models, whether it's ticket fees, partnerships, grants, offsets, anything else that are working, and how should promoters think maybe differently about the ROI?
I think again, because it's a relatively new thing, I think the prices are slightly inflated, and that will slowly come down. I think when we first started using synchronized generators, to get a synchronized pair of generators, it would cost you double the amount for two of the same generators. I think slowly that from obviously I can't speak from the management point of view from Coldplay, but on a Coldplay point of view, it was how could we do it? And we found that you could be ultra expensive or ultra cheap, and it was how to find the middle. And like I say again, we spoke to a lot of people that were involved in this before, and we did a lot of research. But I think promoters and everybody else have to look. And other bands just look that it is doable. Yeah, it may cost you a little bit more, but like we brought the energy bikes in, we brought the floors in because that brings also the paying customer in as part of the show. It all did something on part of the show, so that helps with that sort of thing. You can bring more people, and whatever band it is. I know budgets can be difficult on tours. You've got a lot of things to look at, and relative to generators, it's probably at the minute a little bit more expensive. Yeah. But in the long run, it's well worth the investment.
So you mentioned bring more people in. I'm not sure I understand the relationship there. How does Renewables, does it bring more people in because you're creating more goodwill and brand value for Coldplay?
I think that's some part of it. Yeah, and people can feel part of it. It brings more. You can introduce sustainability to more people. So if they've got these people that are fans, or just the sustainability thing can also bring people in just to look at and then become part of the show and then enjoy the whole experience. I think it's just again moving on knowledge, not just to the people that you're dealing with and working with, but also to the public that are coming to these shows. Some of the other aspects for obviously we were completely working a sustainable system with foods and everything and water and the lot. So, to involve your audience and everything else I think is to get them aware of how they can be more sustainable, as well as how the show can be more sustainable, and working it together. And that, okay, it may cost wise, it may put 50 cents a dollar on the ticket, but it makes it more sustainable.
Yeah.
And push that industry. And as I say, I think as we evolve, the industry will slowly those prices will become the norm. It'll slowly reduce, and we'll get to a set point, because I think eventually, we will just be using batteries. I think that's the way forward.
Mm-hmm.
And Coldplay also uses pedal bikes and dance floors to generate energy. So I think that's part of the experience as well. Dre, how about you and costs? And do you also see anything in the brand value that maybe is part of the ROI of sorts?
So yeah, the costs, it is, in most cases, it's still more expensive than generators. But like I said, we're seeing these costs reduce over time, even show by show in a single year, right? I'm seeing some of these costs reduce. The way that it's sort of a multi-pronged approach to bring these systems to our shows. One of them is like ticket fees, right? So we've got, depending on the show, we do have, whether it's $1 or $5, right? A sustainability fee that is within that ticket, and all that money we get to use for, our cups, or for my passion project, right, which is the energy side of life. So we're using sustainability fees. I also started working with, or our company started working with Reverb. So we partnered with them for the first time last year, and they were able to give us a grant to help produce that first show, Portola, with a hybrid system. And we've worked with them on a number of shows the last 2 years, most recently on Camp Flognaw, and they were able to help us offset the cost to bring in 2 batteries, and then we had generators to recharge those batteries. So I was essentially doubling the size of the system this year, but they helped us offset those costs. We were able to gather the data, which just received it yesterday. But in doing that, I'll now be able to say, okay, well, now we can right size the show next year, and maybe I can bring those costs down. And that's music to certainly our controllers' ears, if that's possible. We're also tracking our fuel, every single delivery of fuel that goes into every generator, we are tracking, so that we can capture that true cost of generator and fuel, right, versus our battery or solar hybrid systems. And then it's kind of the buy-in, right? Like, I've had to work closely, and our team has worked closely with our production managers, stage managers, vendors, executives, finance folks, to help them feel comfortable, right? Moving in this direction, feel comfortable spending a bit more money, knowing it's the right thing to do. And also knowing that with some time, we will be able to see those costs come in line with generators, or possibly even below that cost. So again, multi-pronged approach to that. And on the public side of life, we do, talk about it on our website. Some shows are much more geared to sustainability focus, where it's really part of the language and the marketing for the show itself. So that's really helpful. Yeah. Oh, Joel, I think you're on mute.
Indeed I am. First time Zoomer. No, just kidding. Charlie, how about you and costs?
So for us, we're slightly different in the sense that we're in the nonprofit sector. We have signed a sustainability pledge, and we too work with Reverb, a great group of folks there. They help you find different grants and ways to offset your costs as well. But another good one is Canned Aid. We zero carbon out our entire event, in the sense that all the way down to our food vendors, we tell them you signed the sustainability pledge. You cannot use styrofoam. You cannot use one-use plastics. We took out 2,700 pounds of recycled aluminum cans this year. I can't remember the tonnage on the compost we did, and that's another way to offset too. Is if you go out and you find these compost programs and or environmental programs at colleges. For instance, we used Huntington University in West Virginia. Their environmental department came over and they took all the compost for us because they see value in it. So therefore, that offset our cost. We also come in and we add. This year, we'll be adding a sustainability fee on every ticket. It's another thing we don't necessarily advertise that on the checkout process, but it's built in already to the ticket as a part of our sustainability pledge.
I'm curious, how much are we talking about?
This year, I'm going to go for I think $1.75 to $2.
Okay. De
Yep.
minimis. The price of about, a quarter beer or something.
Right. Well, another thing we do to engage the public is this year too. I'm a firm believer that if we're going to change the direction of this thing and get it going in the right spot, we've got to start with the youth. So how do you engage youth at a concert? Well, one of the things we're doing this year, our sustainability officer is going to build almost like a slingshot thing where we crush the cans. If you slingshot, you get X amount on the bullseye, then we're going to give you a prize pack. You know what I mean? Which will be something that we put together with Candade and Reverb. We also do free watering stations throughout the event as well. That's something we've grown into as well. Water Monster was a great partner on that one.
Yeah.
It's finding those small things that you can do that when you get to the bottom line, they stack and it starts to make sense. And you see, oh, okay, well that wasn't really painful at all. So, and then finding where you can actually do more of it is our challenge.
Sure.
And to make it more commonplace.
Somebody asked, how are the batteries charged? Is it solar? Is it diesel, renewable diesel powered generators? How are you doing that? I'll just let anybody jump in on that one.
We're a combination. We came onto a site this past year. It was the first time we'd been on this site. It was an old mountaintop removal site, coal mine. So it's flat. Well, there was one power line going through there, and when the overdrive guys came out, they're like, "Hey, I wonder how much power's on that." So we contacted the power company, and we were able to put in, I believe it was 4 600 amp services to trickle charge our batteries, as opposed to using generators. Now on the stage, I believe we still had some generator in there. It's either 1 or 2. I can't quite remember how many we had this year. But we also doubled our size. That's another problem we've had to find is the fine line between growth and profitability versus the cost of everything. Because we've been on a trajectory, thankfully, of an upward spike. Each year we've grown. So to assess what we're going to do to the next year, it's been more difficult each time because we don't know what we're going to do till we get there. But we were able to put in those. We had a solar field, plus we had shore power.
Shore power is just a grid connected.
Yeah.
Power.
Yeah. Appalachian Power put it in for us. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that TVA? Is that hydropower largely, or Tennessee Valley Authority? No, it's not.
It's Appalachia, man. We're coal country.
Okay. Dre, Paul, what about how do you power the batteries?
We used mains up where we could, grid power where we could. This is one of the things we're trying to with Green Nation and people like that, trying to educate the stadiums that we need a feed backwards, if you know what I mean, towards where we place the generators or the batteries, where they're placing them. Which people are coming to it. If not, we would use HVO run generators, but we'd only run them for like the 2 hours to charge the system, and that'd be it.
Yeah.
But wherever we could, we'd use shore power. I mean, Toronto, we ran the whole show on shore power and batteries. And London, the last 12 shows in London we've just done, were completely run on house power and generate and batteries on the battery system. We didn't turn the key on any generators at all.
Yeah.
Go ahead. We tried solar. It's unfortunate because of the speed of tour moves. We haven't got the area. We can't go, we're going to take that car park away and put a load of solar on. We have got solar that charges We have smaller batteries that we use for the tech, so for people to charge tools up, and the bikes charge these small batteries, and the solar and the dance floors that then power what we call the C stage, which was the acoustic stage that the boys would go on to every night. So, we were trying to get energy from every source possible. We did have wind turbines at one point, but to make them really efficient, the size was going to be too much. So we had solar, we've got kinetic energy, we had the batteries. We used as much as we could in whatever way possible just to try and reduce the intake and, of course, house power where it was available. We'd use as much as we could because the show would run mainly on battery, but all the rigging, things like that, we used to put on the house so that we could shut everything down. And it's all part of the process. With a tour, obviously, you bring in a village in and you've got to be up and running within 7 hours, but then you've got to be out of the way in 4. So there's a process. So it's, to get the batteries in place and ready to go, and within 3 hours, the power on was, I had a good electrical team. We had good people to listen, and, the vendors and a lot of the, stadium we played in, they were like really on for us to get it done and be part of the the historical tour it turned into, basically.
Dre?
All of the things. The first thing we always look for is grid power. So if we can tie into that or recharge batteries, even if we have to move the batteries to charge overnight and bring them back and do swaps, that's ideal. In certain locations, we build small solar farms. Out at Coachella, we install out in sort of our perimeter lots. We've got 20-foot tall towers. We install solar panels on those that feed a battery. We get a lot of sun out there, and that powers lighting, cameras, etc. And then generators is our last choice, but on stages, that's almost always our only choice. So we'll use, whenever possible, the Tier 4F generators, and we always request R99 renewable diesel, which helps reduce those life cycle emissions by 70% or so. So that's helpful as well.
99 refers to the percentage comes from renewables, usually waste grease and oils and fats and things like that. You mentioned the towers that have the solar panels. Are those towers built exclusively for solar panels, or are they piggybacking on lighting or sound or some other purpose?
No, the towers we've had for years. We just install signs and lighting. It's a good visual. And so Overdrive is who we worked with on that one, and they came up with a bracket that we had engineered to hold those solar panels. So it was a modification to an existing asset we own.
Well, speaking of Overdrive, Neil Vasaveda, it comments that the most effective applications don't charge batteries per se. The batteries are a storage medium. We use solar generators and grid power, and we swap the batteries, to your point. Part of the art is having the software and the hardware to build an effective and resilient application. So I guess to make those swappable in real time, if necessary. So that's helpful. There's another question just came in. It says, since we're on the topic of batteries, is there any way to ensure the ingredients are sourced ethically? The ingredients in batteries, like with little labor abuse, and as little environmental impact as possible for the metals mined for the batteries. That sounds like next level, but I'm curious if any of you have had any experience with sourcing batteries.
I'll just say only because I've recently learned and been educated on this. So I think NMC, lithium, nickel, what is it, manganese, cobalt. I think, and Neil can chime in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that is the one that's used in cell phones. It's not ethically sourced typically, and may have more thermal runaway potential than the lithium iron phosphate batteries that we typically use on shows. I will say, though, in renting batteries, because we have not purchased batteries, but in renting them, I have not gone down the rabbit hole to see how they have been sourced, and if it was ethically sourced. So it's a good question.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
Neil, feel
our
free to weigh in
system
on
is
that. Go ahead.
ex BMW car batteries. Is we recycled them. BMW came forward and helped us out, but they were all so we were recycling the batteries. Other than that, that's as far as I know.
So you're using recycled car batteries as a storage
Yes.
mechanism, and then what happens at the end of their useful life?
Once they've got about 22 to 25 year life cycle, well, not at what we can require, what we can run them at, if you know what I mean. So the idea is, once they move forward, they basically you can put them out, on small villages, things like that, just to get minimal power, things like that, water purification. It can go into that where it's not a huge load. I mean, the loads that we're hitting it with can, it does minimize the life, but it can be anything up to 20 years. So they've been in the cars, they now come through that, and then they go from there. Like I say, that's not me. I just jump from toe to toe now. So it's been good. We're going to push forward. I believe when Coldplay do go back out, they're going to push forward even more. So we'll keep going, basically.
So we've talked about cost. We've talked about some of the risks and the interconnectivity with the local jurisdictions. I'm sure reliability. We touched on that, but I want to sort of lean in on that a little bit. When a generator fails, a diesel generator fails, it takes, I don't even know, someone tell me a certain amount of time to bring that back up, which if it's in the middle of a show or any time, really, it can be a significant event or at least an inconvenience. What about with renewables in terms of or battery power in particular, in terms of being able to bring that back up? Charlie, I think you had an incident where you experienced that. Tell us about that.
We had an incident where a battery, the manufacturer or the purveyor of the rental on those said batteries wouldn't give us the correct access to the inside, give our engineers, not me, I'm not on that side, but wouldn't give our engineers the inside access to make those changes that are necessary as power needs go up and down. They fluctuate. It's just, because when the show's full on, all the videos on, the lights on, the sound's hitting, everything's popping at the same time. You're way up here, to whereas when you're flipping a band over on a stage in a festival scenario, it drops down drastically. Well, I guess the battery was set in a wrong capacity, but now what I can say is our engineering team and our electricians had that thing going and flipped back over in beatnik speed. I mean, it was record time. We noticed it definitely went down because the whole stage went completely quiet and dark. But they had the thing back up, I want to say, in about 3.5 minutes.
Wow.
It's
We don't
amazing.
get it. We don't have that look until we synchronize everything. We can't afford to lose that show for a second.
Yeah.
So we have a specific show time. So basically we synchronize. The batteries were all synchronized together. We made sure that the batteries the percentage was big enough to deal if we had issues with certain batteries. And if it all went wrong, if we had generators available, or we taught a generator to charge for sort of a while because it was the only way we could charge the batteries, then they were synchronized to the batteries. So no matter what went on, we wouldn't lose power. It'd be a flicker. And
Right.
that's something that's touring's been for a long time. We use synchronized generators.
Right. I think the big thing on this side
years
too
and
is
years.
that where it's a growing industry and everybody's still learning this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've got these new purveyors and new rental companies coming up. It's like I said, the difference, there is a big difference between the concert rental industry and the standard rental industry. And understanding that, I think, was where the disconnect came on our end. Fortunately enough, we had a great squad on hand that quick. It was done. They fixed it. And I think that's something that purveyors will learn as they get more into this side of that industry, of allowing the engineers that are on the site that know what they're doing, the access to make the calls and move it around as necessary.
I've got I'm sorry, Dre, were you going to say something just now?
Nope.
No, yeah.
Yep.
I've got a lot of screens open on my monitor here, so I missed that Neil had weighed in multiple times here. So I just want to quickly cover back to that question of the ethically sourced or the materials in batteries. And he says that some of the older systems were nickel, manganese, cobalt, which are more valuable at the end of life, so great for recycling, but they're heavy metals, which means basically that they're toxic at any concentration. But he said nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries can be 20 to 30% lighter and put out a lot more power in short bursts. But the lithium ion phosphate batteries which the automotive industry is increasingly using, is starting to move in that direction. And he adds that the interesting part of Healing Appalachia is that it was a diesel generator that failed, and the system available didn't have the same synchronization option that Charlie mentioned. It was as the Goldenvoice systems have. So that means it's important to have control over the software and hardware, and that sounds like a whole other discussion about how because Paul, you mentioned synchronization as if it's just sort of simple, and I'm sure it's not.
No, it's not. It takes, it's all computer controlled these days. It used to be a manual synchronization back in the day where the lights went dim and you pushed the breaker in and you'd link it to the next one. But now, because it's electronic, we can control it a lot more. So yeah, we parallel everything up and make sure everything runs together, and then we'll lose whatever we need to lose if there's an issue. But we never, ever lose power.
Well, we're heading into the home stretch here. So I want to ask one or two, well, depending on how long the answers are. So wrap-up questions. And I'm going to start with you, Dre. If every festival or concert promoter watching this took one step tomorrow towards renewable power, what should that step be?
Talk to your power provider and tell them that you want to use battery systems at your shows. And let's talk about how to make it happen. Start those conversations, because I'm starting to see, Overdrive's been in the battery game from their inception, but a lot of our traditional power companies, some have been quick to jump on board and invest in battery systems. Others have not. But find a company that's willing to dive in with you and willing to experiment. Reach out to, I'm happy to share what I've learned. I know just an inkling, about this stuff, or reach out to somebody like Overdrive who really understand these systems and figure out at least how to dip your toe in the water. Like once you start, it's so easy to continue rolling and finding new ways to reduce your emissions, reduce your fuel consumption, and make a quieter environment, right, for your staff and fans. So just be willing to give it a shot.
Dip your toe in the water, but don't touch any electrical components while you're doing
That's
that. I
right.
just had to say that.
Right.
Paul, how about you? What's the one thing you would advise?
I think, from a touring point of view, we've proved now it can be done. I think it's a matter of promoters and artists need to look at it and think, it's the right thing to do. Basically, let's start working at this and pushing forward and bringing more artists and more promoters and bring the sustainability to the forefront of it instead of like leaving it at the back as an afterthought. I think it's something we need to keep and maintain and keep it in the forefront of everybody's minds. And I think more bands like Coldplay should, they're driving it, and I think people should follow. I think we should just all, the whole industry needs to just move forward and agree as a whole that this is the way forward. We have to start doing something about this. And we're in an environment where because of the industry we're in, we can we can express that to more people. It moves it to more people. That's what I mean. So the more we can bring it forward, the more people will learn from it. So I believe it's, like I say, promoters, bands, people like artists, and just say, look, this is, give them the breakdown. If it's about cost, this is the this is the difference. It's not going to be too huge, but I understand budgets are budgets, but I think that's the way to go forward, promoters and bands, to move it forward.
Charlie, I'll give you the last word here.
I think it starts just like where we are right now and having these conversations and folks, being interested in chiming in on this thing. Myself, like I said, man, I'm in coal country. I would have never have thought that this was possible. I would never have thought in a million years that we could pull off what we pulled off with the efficiency and the way we did it. I also think bringing in partners to the table that understand more than you and don't ever think you're the smartest guy in the room, to not be afraid to ask the questions and get the answers. The Overdrive folks have been great partners for us, and I would encourage anybody to give those guys a call. They're very knowledgeable and they're quick. I mean, they're real quick.
That's great.
Start small.
Start small, think big.
Mm-hmm.
Three quick things before I let you all go. First of all, thank you to the panel, to Dre, Paul, and Charlie, for a great conversation. We got into the weeds, as I was hoping we would, and covered a lot of ground. I'm sure there's a lot more to talk about, but and that gets to our second thing, which is that MSA has just produced a guide for clean energy at live events, which a link to which will be sent to everyone who registered for this webinar when the guide is finalized next week. The guide is a result of a year-long effort by the Renewable Energy Working Group, which is part of MSA. It convened all during 2025, which brought together industry leaders to discuss and share best practices for implementing clean energy solutions at live events. And third and finally, mark your calendar for the third annual Music Sustainability Summit coming up on April 14th. Once again, at Solotech Studios in Hollywood. We'll be talking more about renewables there, along with a host of other topics, from plant-based foods and fan travel to sustainable merch and carbon offsets. And we hope you can join us there. That's a wrap. On behalf of MSA, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Joel McCower. Have a great rest of your day.